AI assistants are going to be huge across every single industry, and this is the big prediction that's going to be a game changer.
Hello and welcome to Breaking Ground, a CheckProof podcast. I'm Joe Cage, Head of Customer Success here at CheckProof. Today I'm joined with Ant Morse, founder of Adventure Tech. Welcome, Ant.
Hey Joe, thanks for having me along.
So could you just give a really quick kind of explanation as who you are, what you do?
Sure thing, Joe. Yeah, so I'm a futurist and an AI advisor. We deep research into products that might change the future. So we spotted AI's impact, particularly around generative AI, many years ago. So we're now part futurist, looking at where next, but also now helping organizations manage this journey into an AI future organization.
And you said generative AI is something that's been around for a few years. Does it feel like such a big thing now just because it's more accessible to the general public, do you think?
Yeah, it is. And in my background, I was an executive in a digital telco for 29 years, and we've been using AI for many years. It's far from new. In fact, it goes right back to the 50s and the Alan Turing kind of enigma era, if you like, was when it kind of was born. What happened then is machine learning made it really useful. So it's used in all sorts of things, from recommending shopping when you're on Amazon or a film in Netflix, as an example. But then it progressed and was faster and more efficient. But the big transformation was generative AI, where it now moves from useful into it builds. So before it used to help you be more efficient, and now it can create. So the GPT, the generative pre-trained transformer, was the invention that Google launched, and then the marketplace grabbed hold of it. And then we have solutions like ChatGPT and Google's Gemini and Perplexity and Claude and all those things. So that was the bit that kind of gave us an opportunity to go to the next stage.
How do you approach kind of predicting trends in industries like the ones we work in, aggregates, cement, concrete, asphalt?
Yeah, and this again is the kind of always the question of futurism. What is it? Technology is a huge part of it. So we are deep researchers, if you like. We look at the horizon of what new technologies are coming down the line, but that's only a third of the jigsaw. The other two parts are, will society use those technologies? Again, generative AI is a great example. People are using it. It took 16 years to get to 100 million users of the mobile phone. I think it took the internet 7 years to get to 100 million users, and Facebook just a couple of years. It took ChatGPT 3 months to get to 100 million users. So people, are using it. So it's the tech's great. We kind of ticked all those boxes, but then how will society use it? Well, again, this is part of our research. People are using it, so it must be useful. Then the third aspect to this is who'll pay for it. So this technology is mind blowing, and again, 100 million people used it in just 3 months, but we don't pay for it, right? It's a free of charge service. Yes, you can pay for premium versions, but ultimately there's a model. What futurism does is it allows you to say, so the technology is great, people are using it, but there's no free lunch. So how are we going to monetize it? How are we going to move from a free service into paid services? And that's a great pivot for us to say, well, clearly there's going to be corporate enterprise grade services that arrive. There's going to be super useful consumer services that arrive on the back of this. And we're starting to see some of our early predictions as to how these things will be monetized by using that process. Collectively, tech, society, economy, we call it the collision sequence. So if something passes through our research positively in each of those areas, it collides in the middle as something that we need to then take to the next level.
So how do you think companies avoid falling into the kind of, it's a great idea, but the application is a bad fit?
Yeah, and that's where we are with many of the AI solutions we're in at the moment. Harvard Business Review, probably about 6 months ago, suggested that 80% of AI projects will fail. MIT just a couple of months ago said, in fact, 95% of solutions are failing. And that's because, great that we might look at a solution and say, technically it's great, people want to use it, and we can see a, commercial model for it to be successful. But then you have to apply that into your industry. Then you have to apply it into your organization, processes, and everything else. And sometimes there it can be a great idea, but it isn't actually solving a problem. One of the statements I often make is innovation that doesn't solve a problem is a gadget. And gadgets don't really fit in businesses. So again, some stuff might be great, but actually will it make it through? And that's where businesses can avoid that trap. So collision sequence doesn't just stop at what might be possible. You can then really kind of rigorously apply that into a business practice and say, is this going to work for us?
So what would you say it means for companies in the heavy industry to stay relevant in this kind of fast changing digital environment that we have today?
Well, I think for any organization, again, it's important to see what's coming down the channel and to stress that point of, let's just rule out the gadgets. But then it's to really understand where new technologies like AI are actually going to be useful. And again, not to be too focused on the headlines of hype, it's going to do this, it's going to do that. Actually, to then bring it into the business and say, well, this is what it's capable of. How might we deploy it? How might we make use of it? And that's really where you move from a great idea into understanding if it's going to fit or not through kind of like innovation style sprints, kind of assessments to say, um, will it improve a process? But also as well, and critically, is to make sure that it's done so in a safe manner. So again, AI is still in its infancy of impact. It's great and it does some neat things, but actually, is it safe? So you go beyond the has it got a use? Will people use it? And is it going to be affordable? Into actually saying, is it going to be safe as well? So there's a lot of focus, but that kind of sprint innovation mentality is really required to again move us from great idea into practical applications.
Yeah, and what would you say that sprint innovation kind of methodology would look like in practice for kind of some of our listeners, some of our customers, so quarries, cement plants, operators, how could they put it in place
Yeah, and
in their workplace?
I think if we think about an accountancy as probably as a contrasting example, the calculator made an accountant super efficient. So it was taking the time of doing the number crunching and freeing that person up because the calculator could do it for them. Same applies in any organization where understanding what the processes that are in place today and then working out where you could have time savings by automation taking over. And it's about getting the balance right as well to say we could automate it, but should we? What's the human process? What's the human value of somebody doing that? And I'm working with one company at the moment where we could, in theory, automate nearly every process in the business. They're a regulated industry. There's a letter of law that says it's this or it's that, and it's very clear cut. So AI is perfectly suited to full automation of their industry. However, there are lots of things in there that a customer may ask questions and want to know more information on. And actually, while we could automate it, we shouldn't automate it. It's about actually keeping humans in the loop.
Mm.
And that in any environment is important. I think where it gets into the kind of the quarries and the cement and fleet operation is bringing AI into super useful areas such as IoT and things like that. So you've got a plethora of things that are becoming connected. We said there's a lot of technology coming down to us. There's a lot of technology everywhere. So, innovations in Internet of Things and sensors and communication devices to devices, machines to machines is growing at an exponential rate. AI is the power plant. That's the kind of the automation that says, well, if this machine says this, and it follows a set of processes and triggers and trips and alerts that then either alert a human or another machine responds. So it's almost a question of looking at your processes. Where can you get rid of some admin? Where can you make things more efficient and allow humans to do the more interesting work or the more important work? And then really how some of these technologies are going to be empowered to the next stage. Because as I say, Internet of Things, nothing new, been around for a long, long time, but it's getting smarter now and it's getting really interesting.
From your research into AI, IoT, VR, data analysis, all this sort of thing, which do you see as the biggest near-term impact to the construction materials industry?
Sure. So much tech that I think there's a few standout ones for me. The first is AI. Sorry, probably AI assistance. So this is my big prediction. So if you think about AI doing useful things for us, imagine if AI ran your daily life, whether it's as a citizen and consumer or whether it's as part of your job. So this is literally going to be the next evolution of the mobile phone. So at the moment, people log onto phones or tablets or specialist devices to access work. You'll just literally pop a headset in or have a glass technology, and you will literally talk to your assistant. So if you're working in a quarry environment, as an example, you put your headset in and it will know it's you. It will communicate with you, very friendly, very kind of there'll be lots of kind of empathy and positive communication. It may just then ask you, where are you wearing a hard hat? Have you got a high vis jacket on? Have you observed the on-site safety? And it will know exactly where you are and the tasks that you're about to carry out. So it will guide you through that. It will then maybe say, you're going to be working in this area today. These are the machines you're going to be working with. These are the people you're going to be working with. And if you're wearing a glass solution, you may look up and I'd see it's Joe. If I didn't know you, Joe, it may just give me a little bit of information about you. So I feel that I know you a bit better. And then it will start to work through whatever it is we're doing. So you're going to have like a third person constantly in the mix. And this is, in theory, this will replace applications on a mobile phone. So you may have a mobile phone or a device, but it's probably tucked in your pocket or in a ruggedized case. And it will only interact if it needs to. So if it needs to send you some information, it'll say, I've just pushed it through to your device. You'll get your phone out and the information will instantly be there. AI assistants are going to be huge across every single industry. And this is the big prediction that's going to be a game changer. But I think in areas where there is specialist skill, high risk, dangerous occupations, and heavy machinery, this is where we'll see incredible solutions, massively helping us be efficient, but also keeping us super safe. And the glass technology I mentioned as well is another option. And I think in construction and any environment where there's hazards, these are going to be very, very useful. And again, not overly new, but AI is going to really bring them to life to the next stage where you'll be able to see certain parts of a site almost in like a digital twin. So rather than looking at a machine, you'll probably then see an augmented overlay that gives you some information about how it's performing or whatever task you're doing with it. And again, this will probably be built into kind of hard hat solutions. And again, not new, but AI is really going to move it on to the next stage. You'll also have the AI assistants will do a lot of unconscious value as well, so they'll help with accessibility. So if you have people with particular needs or requirements, whether it's translation from a foreign language because they're from an overseas workforce, or whether it's a literacy challenge, all of this will go away because you'll just speak to your device, your assistant. It's all going to be in this natural language. And ultimately, encompassing all of that is this kind of AI assistant being an assistant. So if you carry out a task and there's a bit of information missing, rather than you kind of not being able to click go on a form that currently might happen, AI will say you've missed this bit, can we just go back to it? Or as you're working through that process, it may just interrupt you and say, hang on a second, we haven't quite got this answer. So you're filling in forms as you're walking for a cup of tea, or you kind of walking to the edge of the site as well. So AI validation, checkpoint, all of that is really going to be important because again, having these assistants communicating with devices, helping us, whether it's be smarter in our admin, or whether it's far wider in terms of the safety aspect. But these could be hooked up to computer vision cameras that know if you're in a part of the site you shouldn't be in. So rather than an alert going off that might happen now, it'll just nudge your assistant to say, Joe, you shouldn't be on that part of the site. You just need to move a little bit over here. And again, glass technology could kind of gently nudge you into the safer area of that particular site.
So how soon would you say we'd be looking at seeing these products in the
Well, going
market?
back, I expect to see the first versions of full AI assistants start to appear in the next 12 months. Yeah, it might be much quicker, but I think then it will be very easy for innovative entrepreneurial organizations to say, what might this technology do in this industry, and that's when we'll start to see the next version of products, or the progression of products that are already available, become really exciting. So yeah, I don't think it's far away.
Do you think that like an AI driven accessibility could solve a lot of these workforce problems?
Most definitely, we're already seeing it as well. So I work with some construction companies where foreign language translation AI solutions are being used, and literacy problems have been a happy byproduct of automation. And I think what it will do in areas such as construction, will make jobs appealing. And again, in the not too distant future, when we start to have more robot assistants, um, it will make jobs much easier. So this, the labor intensive aspects of roles will be removed. And again, I know it is massively today already, but we could just take it that next stage further, One way I like to describe AI and robotics and the human aspect to this is we'll be the conductor of the orchestra. So,
Mm.
we'll be the person using all of the different parts of technology to complete a task or to deliver a project. And I think, yeah, the opportunities here are so exciting. So much tech on the way.
How can AI and the whole, machine learning realistically help our industry, which is, aggregate cement, asphalt, concrete? Is it a maintenance focus, would you say, or more health and safety? What would you say is going to be the key focus?
Sure, I think there's going to be a few areas. I think maintenance, let's just touch on that first. So I think, we're seeing predictive maintenance become, you know, much more of a priority. I was just contemplating the other day that we don't see as many cars broken down at the side of the road as we used to do, and that's because diagnosis and alerts are becoming much more prevalent. So you're going to get the warning, or it has the limp home mode to get you there. I think in heavier plant and manufacturing and anywhere where there's big machinery, we're going to see exactly the same. So AI will communicate smarter with machines. And in one particular industry with a customer, it's in manufacturing, we actually have augmented reality glasses that can allow an engineer to see certain parts of a machine, in terms of an overlay. So it'll pick up what the temperature of a bearing is in one part of the machine, just as an example, so that while the data could be, put into a document, actually seeing it in glass technology. And again, this is where to bring it to reality, all we're actually doing there is putting a device, an alert on a device that feeds a report that then, presents something in an image in glass. It's nothing too fancy, but in terms of the output for that engineer, it gets all the information they need and they can start to interact, and make assessments based on that. So predictive maintenance that's automated, but also, push to people, I think as well is where it's going to get exciting. And just on that point, Joe, for me, what does AI do? Well, AI, it helps and assists, but it feeds on data. So if you can give it lots of information, it can then be really useful. Many organizations don't use the majority of data they've got. I think one of the stats is that 80% of data that we have isn't used. I think this is the next stage where we'll start to use it. So things like, predictive maintenance will know a machine's not in optimal performance way before it breaks down, a bit like my car analogy there. So I
Mm-mm.
think there's going to be a huge benefit there.
So how can construction materials companies have a culture that accepts these new digital ideas? Here at CheckProof, we work hard to kind of make sure that companies build a culture that accepts using an app instead of pen and paper. Um, is there a similar process that needs to be done for these kind of technologies that we've been talking about?
There is, and I think this is a really important point, and probably the most important point of all, Joe, in that this isn't just going to be a slight change in a particular area or a particular industry. What AI and generative AI and these kind of agents that I refer to are going to do is we're going to take it to the next level. This is the fundamental change of how work is carried out, whether you work in an office, you're on the road, or you're in a location such as a quarry or a building site. This is where everything's going to change. What we must do as a wider society, but particularly as business leaders, is help our people on that journey. We've got to take them with us. There's futile point in fighting it. It will come. If you don't do it, somebody else will. So once we accept that, the next stage is to make sure that we can shape our business to be ready for this AI future. And again, it's not to say that AI is just going to do everything, but to start for some of the obvious and the quick wins, the easy stuff, the unavoidable transformations, is grabbing our workforce super early and taking them with us on that journey. Also, as well, not to just kind of say, this is what we're doing, that's it. A lot of what we're going into is brand new, so we don't actually know where the efficiencies are. So if my strong advice and something that's working really well is to form those innovation teams or those digital teams or AI teams, and not precious on what you call them, but a team that says, look, some transformations in our industry are occurring, whether it's technology, whether it's safety, whether it's regulation, and we'd like you to be part of our team. Pick people from across different areas of the business, pick the positive people, the challenges as well. We don't want this just to be isn't it all wonderful? We want to spot what it's capable of. So work with experts in industry, in technology, and then bring your people in to say, this is what it might do. What do you think?
Are there any other sort of key lessons that you think we can learn from other industries that have already embraced this kind of digital transformation?
I think there are, and I think the one that's probably most relevant for your listeners, I think, is in that manufacturing, which I've mentioned a couple of times, really. But that predictive analysis and digital twin that is happening in manufacturing, I think, can very quickly be embraced by the quarries construction environments, where Internet of Things, sensors on devices, coupled with that kind of glass technology or audio visual twin, digital twin, showing a visual overlay of a site. And again, it kind of ticks all the boxes from efficiency, safety, production quality, and all of those things as well. So I think there's a lot of transferable learnings there for sure.
You've spoke about augmented reality, and a lot of people know what VR is. What is the difference? Just to
Sure.
clarify.
Sure. So the whole kind of school of these technologies is known as spatial computing. So it's you move from actually tapping things into a mobile phone or a device, and you move into this kind of spatial compute. So augmented reality is when things are present in your field of vision. So you can still see your full environment, but you may have a floating screen, if you like, of information. That might be a text message, simply a text message, or in a quarry, it might be that directions to say you're working on section 2 tomorrow, and this is where it is, so it would point an arrow, so a bit like a sat nav, a bit like a heads up display in a car. That's a great example that most people will be familiar with. So that's augmented reality. Virtual reality is when you close out the external world and you move into a completely digital copy. In construction, we're going to see lots of digital twins where you can look at a building, so you'll see a remote model of it. Now, whether that's on a screen in 3D or whether it's through glass technology, where you'll actually be able to kind of, even grab hold of a construction site or a quarry site and move it around and put yourselves in different parts of it. So augmented reality, virtual reality, and then this kind of digital twin.
That kind of technology will really help the transfer of knowledge that is very needed at the minute, because we've got a lot of the average age in the industry is quite high. Not so many young people are coming through. We're slowly starting to lose experience, starting to lose knowledge.
I can give you a great example on this, Joe, actually, as well, which is we worked with a number of telco mast engineers, and for whatever reason, these people tended to be able to retire in their early 50s. So there was an exodus of skill that left the telco industry early, or much earlier than predicted. And again, to that point in construction, which is similar, we were struggling to pull young talent into the organization. What we did is we used a very basic augmented reality solution. It kind of clips onto a hard hat, or you can wear it like glasses, and it has a floating screen in your peripheral vision. And what we did here is we said, well, do these people want to retire? Financially, they might be able to, but do they want to? And the interviews were very straightforward. They said, well, look, do I want to sit in a van in the rain at 8 o'clock in the morning when I can, sit at home? I'm not sure I do. So we said, well, look, why don't we use your knowledge and skill, sit you at home with a cup of tea, some big screens and a great headset, and why don't you work 4-hour shifts, or tell us when you want to work, and we'll give young recruits this augmented reality headset and some headphones, and we'll give them a bit of training and we'll get them out on the jobs. But when they get stuck, they call you. And this solution has a camera on the front of it, and the screen shows any information like technical drawing diagrams, or it might just be that the guy who's got all the experience sat at home with a cup of tea actually draws a diagram and says, it looks like this is where you need to point it, this is what you need to interact with. And this was a fantastic outcome, because again, this workforce that we're leaving now had a plan B. There was another option. Many of them didn't want to retire or leave the workforce, but they didn't want to do the 9 to 5, and the rest. So they now have an opportunity to pass on their skill, but also keep gainful employment that works for them.
What would you say is the most overhyped technology right now, if you had to pick one?
Well, I think it is AI, daft as it sounds. You've brought an AI specialist on your podcast, but we've gone a bit too far with it. Again, it's this headline of hype, that it is going to transform everything and it's going to take all our jobs. It really is just an incredibly clever computer. And I think that's the bit that we need to bring back to reality. Again, it is going to start a huge transformation, but I'm sure a calculator revolutionizing an accountant's life. I'm sure, the machines in the mills of the 1800s, kept people safe and, made work clean and safer. This is our time, but it still requires us. And even if it can do everything, we shouldn't let it do everything.
If you had to kind of sum up the next decade, so slightly longer term, for construction materials in one phrase, what would it be?
I think in terms of what I have as hope for where this technology is going to come in is around predictive automation. So proactively thinking of what is next, and safe working using things like spatial computing. That is it for me. I think it's great. It's going to make work safer, better, and more rewarding.
Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for, but thank you so much, Ant, for coming on today. Personally, it's been really interesting. It's AI and all the other technology you've talked about is a massive kind of talking point at the minute, and it's been really insightful talking to you today.
Joe, thank you for having me on. Real honour and privilege. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And thank you all for listening. Make sure to catch our previous episodes and our future episodes wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you.